Welcome again, everyone. My name is Shayna Jacques. I am the Outreach Manager for PSS Life, and I welcome all of you. Today, we're going to talk about finances. So, how to manage your finances in these uncertain time. And there's five simple actions that you can take. Our, our presenter, not presenters, okay, there's only one person today. Our presenter today is Anthea Perkinson. She is a certified financial advisor and also the advisor with Monterey Associates in Pelham, New York. She's also the president-elect of the FPA New York chapter. I welcome you, Antia. Just before you started, we just want to remind everybody about the census. So PSS has received a grant to help reensure incomplete and accurate census is taken to the community that we serve. The census is important because it impact funding decision for taking for things like infrastructure, healthcare, education, and more. For the first time, people will be able to respond to the census with three ways: online, by phone, and by mail. If you reply by the end of April, no one will come to your house. But if you don't, so that's why when people start coming to your house. So we all want to take action and participate in the census. So count everyone in your home on the 2020 census. That include babies, young children, foster children, and non-relative who lives with you. So for you to complete the census and get some information, you can go on online 2020census.gov. Please take some time to do it because we can help our community. Without no further ado, so Cynthia, you can start now.
Thank you.
I mean, not Cynthia, Antia, I'm sorry. I've been doing webinar every day, so I have a presenter every day. So I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Here we are. There it is?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As Shayna said, my name is Anthea Perkinson, and I am a certified financial planner and enrolled agent. I am also the content developer for Money Made Simple. Money Made Simple is a nonprofit that was founded in 2014 to promote financial education. For 2020, Money Made Simple is in residence at PSS Circle of Care. So I have a couple of slides about Circle of Care. It's
So
founded
you and do you want to put it on slideshow, like
Oh,
it
sure.
bigger on the screen for everybody?
Perfect. Okay.
All right, thank you.
So Circle of Care was founded in 1962. It's a multi-service agency. The mission is to strengthen the capacity of older New Yorkers, their families, communities, etc. PSS Life University, which is where Money Made Simple is, offers educational and other programs designed to help older adults stay healthy, engaged, and connected. The organization also provides free personalized support for those caring for someone who is frail, chronically ill, or has memory loss. They also support grandparents and family members other than a parent who are raising grandchildren. They offer Coming of Age, which is a program to inspire people 50 plus to live with passion and purpose. And they maintain 10 centers to help older adults stay healthy, engaged, and connected. So today we're going to talk about managing your finances in uncertain times. I'm going to give you some practical recommendations for things we can all do to feel more in control of our finances. These are certainly unprecedented times. I don't believe any of us has been through a pandemic before, and we certainly haven't lived through a period when we've been told to shelter at home for what may end up being 45 days by the time we are told we can resume our busy lives. My agenda consists of the 5 steps to take. So we're going to be talking about revisiting financial priorities, making a new spending plan, finding money. Yes, I've got some suggestions there. Expanding our spending power, and what to do about investment accounts. So to begin, when we talk about our financial priorities, think back to what we were feeling at the end of 2019, coming off a year of tremendous growth in the stock market. The S&P 500 was up 33%. This lasted into January. We hit a market high in February. Life was good. And so pre-pandemic, as we were out and about, most of us were very lifestyle focused in our decision-making around spending versus saving versus investing. Then came March, and by the middle of March, we were very much aware that this pandemic was a deadly disease and that we would have to change the way we live, stop shaking hands, wash our hands, avoid sick people, stay inside. And then, of course, by mid-March, we were all in our homes, hoping to protect other people from getting sick. That's where we are right now, where we are still at home, most of us either trying to work from home or some furloughed, some laid off. And our financial concerns really center on safety, both our personal safety, the safety of our money, our assets, and solvency. And solvency refers to the ability to pay our bills, to stay on top of our finances and not run out of money. We can look forward to post-pandemic life. We will be cautiously rebuilding our outside life. Today, the market is up rather dramatically, about 500 points the last I looked. And this is quite remarkable. That's really on the basis of all the conversations and planning about reopening the New York metropolitan area. If you heard Governor Cuomo's update today, it looks to be coordinated among the tri-state area, and there's a lot of optimism that the worst is past us. Remember that in the markets today, both JP Morgan, Chase, and Bank of America announced earnings, and the earnings were terrible, mostly because of the economic problems that came about in the later parts of March. So in spite of their earnings shortfalls, the markets are up, people are feeling good, and I think that we can be somewhat optimistic about how this will all be resolved. So, action step number 1, let us commit to focusing on what we can control, taking constructive actions around our finances, and by doing that, by doing proper things, proper constructive actions, feel better emotionally and be better financially. So when we talk about things we can control, what is it that we can control? Obviously, our spending on non-essentials. That's a good thing to focus on. And number 2, beating ourselves up. As a financial planner, I do meet many, many people who have great anxiety about the financial decisions that they make, often in the form of regret. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have spent the money. I shouldn't have gotten myself into credit card debt. It is not necessarily helpful to ruminate on that, to think of it over and over again. Similarly, through this period of market disruption, and it's been rather dramatic watching the markets go up 300 points, down 500 points, back up 400 points. It's been up and down and sideways, and it is very stress-inducing if you are watching it day to day, hour to hour. It leads to what's called rumination, where you are simply going over and over in your head what you should have done, what you shouldn't have done. None of this is particularly effective, and none of it is going to improve your emotional and financial well-being. So what to do instead? What we're going to do is to make a new spending plan. Now, those of you who have attended my Money Made Simple workshops at Circle of Care know that we start with budgeting. And a spending plan is a new name for a budget, but I promise I'm not going to get into the weeds on how to build a budget here. I'm going to give you a down and dirty way to do this to make it very simple. And obviously, we're going to reorient how we set aside money, because we're going to be focused on essential spending. We're going to be focusing on preserving cash in order to make the most of lower income. And again, I've heard as many tales of people who have been given salary reductions or furloughs. And furloughs are interesting because you might have health insurance, but you don't have a paycheck. So many people are presently looking at lower weekly and monthly income. So let's make this sort of fun. Here's how we start. Let's look at February credit card and bank statements. Now, why would we look at February if it's already April? Because February we were living our pre-pandemic lives, and those statements captured all the things we were up to in January. January, things were looking good. People were very optimistic. As I mentioned, most people were focused more on lifestyle spending, planning trips, going out to eat, thinking about buying new cars, shopping for apartments, all of these types of optimistic, forward-looking spending. Myself included, in January, we took the opportunity to bring our 3 boys, they're all college-aged, on a trip to Greece. Now, nobody goes to Greece in January, so it was actually a very inexpensive trip, but we had a great time. So looking back at my February credit card statements, I see things like dinners in tavernas, tickets to the Acropolis, museums that we visited. It was a very happy time, and it's kind of nice to look back. It's also interesting to look at how differently we lived compared to being in our homes. We're not traveling now. We're not dining out, although we may be doing some takeout. Certainly haven't been to the hair and nail salon. And those of you who can see me on the video screen can tell that's true. We're not entertaining. We're not going to the theater or concerts, live sporting events. Many, many other forms of lifestyle spending is simply dwindled down to pretty much nothing. Maybe we're playing games online, doing a lot of reading, watching a lot of movies, but we are not out and about. The next thing you'd want to look at is your March bank statement. And this is the down and dirty version of budgeting. And really what it is a very quick way to figure out what does it cost to be you in a particular month. And March is interesting because half the month we were living our lives, and then the order to stay home and isolate ourselves came out in the middle of the month, and all of that spending really got curtailed. But if you look at March and you add up on your statement your total ATM withdrawals, your total debit card withdrawals, any electronic or Zelle payments, and all of your cleared checks, this should represent all of your March spending. It's going to be, I would venture, quite a bit less than what you spent the prior month in February or January. When you look at April, which will be a fully shelter-in-place month, the spending is probably going to be even lower. This is particularly true since we're not even obligated to pay our tax bills in April this year. Those have been deferred till July 15th. So the good news is, if we are anxious about our spending rates and preserving money, that we're starting from a good place because we don't have that many outlets where we can presently spend a lot of money. Putting together the spending plan, so as you consider what you spent in March and what you're likely to spend in total in April, and thinking about how you will plan those spends, we have some different priorities. Most people orient their monthly budget and they put the rent or mortgage as number 1, food and medicine on number 2, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to point out that right now, while we're uncertain about our future income, our first priority is food and medicine. We want to make sure that our money lasts and can cover those essentials first and foremost. After that, we want to make sure that we've got health insurance, right? In case we do get sick and end up having to see the doctor or go to the hospital. I will point out, I got a notice yesterday from the Department of Financial Services that there is a bill or governor's order pending to provide some relief on health insurance premiums. So stay tuned. I'm going to give you the website in a slide or two, but that might be a nice break for people who are presently on the health exchange. Another comment on health insurance: if you are unemployed and not eligible for Medicare, you should apply for health insurance through the New York State of Health website. If you're not working and have no income, your premium will be very small, if non-existent. Other types of insurance you may be concerned about: life insurance policies, keeping those in place, property insurance, your homeowner's insurance. Again, on the Department of Financial Services website, there are some guidelines there for requesting relief if those are bills that are hard to keep up with. Utilities. Been speaking with many people who have already reached out to their cell phone company, to Con Edison, and to other service providers to ask for either discounts on their bills or new plans or deferrals on the money that is owed. Those utility companies are more or less waiting for your call and working with people to help get them through this period. With respect to rent or mortgage, you may remember that there's a New York State executive order that all tenants are protected against eviction, whether they are residential or commercial tenants, until June 20th. It was a 90-day hold. For mortgages, some good news also. Again, the Department of Financial Services, which is a regulatory body here in New York State, regulates all financial companies that deal with New Yorkers, whether these are banks, insurance companies, mortgage issuers, and they have mandated that any state-issued loans, mortgage loans, for example, if you have a mortgage through Chase Manhattan Bank or Chase or Bank of America or US Bank, that you have 90 days of forbearance available to you. Now, it's not automatic. You do have to call your mortgage provider and you want them to confirm that this has been granted to you in writing, whether by email or by mail. Credit card debt, bank loans, same story. All of those that are operating in New York have been asked to work with New Yorkers. So, for example, waiving late fees for ATMs, waiving any kind of ATM fee, offer payment accommodations, for example, deferring payments at no cost, extending payment due dates, or otherwise altering terms of existing loans to avoid delinquencies or defaults. Student loans. There's been a lot of press on the federal student loans, which have been basically put on hold from March 13th until September 30th. No interest, no payments due. In New York State, because we do have private loans that are available primarily through banks here, those too have been given, you've got an opportunity to get forbearance for 180 days. Okay, and the website where you will find all of this information is the Department of Financial Services, which is part of the New York government. It addresses things like life insurance premiums, student loans, bank ATM and other fees, bank-issued credit card loans, and mortgages. We have great consumer protection agencies here in New York. This state regulator, Department of Financial Services, is one of them. They literally control the insurance companies, loan issuers, and banks that operate in the state. So when you read their Corona update, you're going to see the generous help that they are really leaning on their these companies to provide to all of us as New Yorkers. Action number 2, to preserve savings. Let's review our credit card statements. You may have done this already, but there are an awful lot of things that I notice that I've got auto-paid through my credit cards. A gym membership that I'm not in a situation to use right now, that can be suspended, and that would be helpful. Unwanted subscriptions, and bear in mind that's not just publications, but people subscribe to all kinds of services and pay on an automatic credit card billing, everything from food delivery to various other types of deliveries, dog walking, online services, game subscriptions, television show subscriptions, all of that. If you're not using it, you can cancel it, suspend it, and save some money. Another thing to think about, if you have a mail-in ride commuter ticket, that can also be suspended. Yes, we all hope to get back to work in May, but it's unlikely that it's going to be May 1. So rather than pay for a full monthly commutation ticket or parking ticket at work, you might want to suspend that and put it back into place later in the year. Another place where if you wanted to reduce spending, you can negotiate your cable package. Now, bear in mind when you call to cut the cable or negotiate something, they often give you more shows rather than a lower price, but if you persist, you can come out with a much lower bill. Similarly, with your cell phone, if you don't ask for the best plan, you're unlikely to get it. And we learned this recently. We had a cell phone plan for the 5 of us. And every month, one of those boys would go over the number of minutes of data, and we would get, I think it was a $15 charge. It was just like whack-a-mole. And when we finally called to say, how do we fix this? We found out that there are much better plans available now. Data's gotten cheap, and we were able to reduce that bill. The other ways that you might find to stop some auto payments is to look for auto renews for various types of memberships or contributions. Memberships could be anything like professional associations. It can be museum memberships. All of these can be restarted later. Same thing if you're making charitable or other contributions. Those can be restarted once you're feeling more in control and more comfortable with the outlook of your future income. Action step number 3, let's find some money. Now this is a lot of fun, and I do this in my Money Made Simple workshops. Those who've attended will remember this, but I also have done it with individual clients. Missingmoney.com is an aggregate site that when you put in your name and your state will take you to either the treasurer or in our case, the comptroller of New York. You end up on the Thomas DiNapoli's comptroller's website where they have record of all kinds of abandoned funds. And I have found lots of money for people. If you had a rich uncle who died and left you money and that insurance company didn't know how to find you, that money is sitting there. There is presently $9 billion in unclaimed funds. But even if you don't have a rich uncle who may have left you some money, if you ever turned off Con Ed service, moving from apartment to apartment, or Cablevision, or a variety of other different types of utilities or subscription services, those you may have been given a rebate of money for service you didn't get, and those checks, if they don't have a forwarding address, often end up with the state comptroller. So it's actually a lot of fun to go on there and search for money. If you've lived in other places, check in those states too. Not every state has this search capability, but a vast majority of them do. So if you went to school somewhere, lived someplace else for a year, it's worth poking around to see if this money ended up sitting there. Other opportunities, IRS Free File. If you were due for a refund for 2016, 2017, 2018, or 2019, and that's the current year we're working on, it is really incumbent on you to file your taxes. And if you use Free File, it will show you all the places, all of the service providers, and what the requirements are by age, by income, to file without having to pay for the service. Most of them are pretty easy to work with, and so it's an easy thing to do. I will point out, tomorrow is the last day that you can file for a refund for 2016. You only have 3 years back that you can claim that refund. After that, it's sort of too late, statute of limitations. If you have a dependent child who earned money maybe from a summer job or a job during school, earned less than $9,000 in 2019, don't forget that they are eligible to use IRS Free File and request a refund of their federal and state income taxes. If they were a dependent on your 1040, they can get that money back. It's their money. They might need it. I'm leaning on my 2 sons who had summer jobs last year to help them get this done so that they will have some spending money, since I'm not sure how soon they'll have summer jobs this year. Lastly, since there is this period from March 13th till September 30th, 2020, when no federal student loan payments are due, if you made one, you can actually have it refunded. So you're not obligated to make a payment. There is no interest accruing. If you made a payment and you'd prefer to have that money back, and this might have happened, for example, because you have these automatically deducted from your checking account, it's a practical thing to do, but you can call up your service provider, your servicing agency, and they will process a refund. And the last one we worked on, or I worked on with a client, it took about 2 weeks for the money to come back. Other money that belongs to you. Keep a lookout for airline tickets that you may have purchased earlier in the year. They have been required under the CARE Act to refund fully ticket prices and fees. And so but you have to make sure they're canceling flights so many weeks out. So you'll see it if you bought it, for example, at the beginning of March. Depending on when you were expected to fly, you may or may not see that airline ticket reversed on your credit card statement. Same thing, refunds for canceled ticket events, whether these were hosted by museums, for concerts. There was an article in Friday's New York Times about Ticketmaster being a little bit difficult here. They're calling a lot of concerts postponed rather than canceled. And so I think they are coming under some pressure here in New York to reverse that and begin issuing refunds. Rebates and reductions from insurance companies for car insurance. You probably have heard this either on the news or in the newspaper, but a good place to look for a list of what companies have issued discounts is aarp.org. They have a list of all the car insurance companies that are giving 25% off, 15% off, 20% off, and whether you have to ask for it or whether it's automatic. So that's a good place to check. Other places where you might round up some money that belongs to you. If you're walking around with a cash balance on Venmo, it's a practical payment tool, but you might rather have that money in the bank, so you could ask to have that or arrange to have that transferred in. Credit card reward balances. Most of us forget about these unless we have a particular trip or goal in mind. At the beginning of the year, most people aren't really thinking about this, but particularly those cards that allow you to use your rewards balance to either pay down your credit card or to be given to you in cash. Might be time to look at this and collect some of those dollars. And lastly, most of us have in a drawer sitting somewhere gift cards given to us by friends and family at places we may or may not shop on a regular basis. If that is something you too suffer from, there's a great article at moneypantry.com. It's a review of the 10 best places to sell gift cards. And I would have included, the number one A+ rated from Better Business Bureau, but each of the online or physical entities that buys these cards has benefits and disadvantages. So it's better to read it and figure out which ones are best for you. Other sources of cash. And again, I want to address that concern that people right now feel a tremendous need to have cash at the ready, beef up their savings accounts, make sure that they've got money in checking to tide them through this period of uncertainty. I have a Roth IRA as number 10, so it's not the first thing you do, but don't forget that with a Roth IRA, you have the right at any time to withdraw your contributions. No tax, no penalty. And I put this here to remind you of that fact, but also recognizing that many, many people, for whatever reason, put money into Roth IRAs and never invest it. I have run upon countless numbers of Roth accounts that are either sitting in cash or sometimes invested in bond funds. And if you're invested in bond funds, well, one of the good pieces of news is most of those bond funds are up right now. So you could make this withdrawal, see no tax or penalty, provided you just took out your contribution amounts, and use that money and put it into your cash savings. Action step number 4. Let's talk about spending power. What is that? Well, that is our ability as workers with income and savings and access to credit to spend on what we want. If you add up how much we are able to each spend based on how much we make, how much we have in savings, and how much of a credit limit we have, we each have a fair amount of spending power. So something that you may want to consider doing to tide you through this period of uncertainty is extend your available credit limits. Now, I also already mentioned the Department of Financial Services. They are requesting that banks that operate in New York extend the credit limits for creditworthy customers. So they are feeling the pressure to say yes. So one of the things you might do is to, for example, take your $1,000 credit limit, maybe take it to $1,500, help you get through this uncertain patch. Another opportunity might be to apply for a 0% credit card. Now, this is 0% for current charges. These offers are still out there for people who have good credit. Obviously, if you still have a job, it's easier to qualify. And again, banks, I would start with a bank card first, are feeling some pressure to say yes. Another opportunity, if you're really feeling some anxiety about your savings situation, is to consider applying for a cash-out home equity loan. That is a second mortgage. You don't have to take out an enormous amount, but if you felt even $20,000 would be good, and you had the equity, and you had a good credit score, this may take a while, but it should be easy for you to do. The other thing you could consider is a line of credit, and that works like a checking account where you get checks with a total dollar amount of whatever you're approved for. If you write these checks and cash them, spend the money effectively, you're charged interest. You have typically either 7 or 10 years to use the money and pay it off. If you don't, by the time you reach the end of that usage period, it reverts into a second mortgage, and you have a second mortgage payment. This too, since interest rates are so low, can be a great airbag. If your future looks uncertain based on your job, your significant other's job, this may be a nice thing to have. Even if you never use it, they're not terribly expensive. It's not including the origination fee. And I'll give you a website where you can look at these and see if this is a good solution for you. Option for preserving savings. If you came into our pandemic period here with balances on your credit cards that are giving you some anxiety, I know financially, the advice is always to pay it down, get rid of it, stop paying the interest. But if you are uncertain with respect to your future income, how about you pay the minimum? You'll still make progress. It'll cost you a little bit more money for the time that you do that, but it will help you preserve cash. Another opportunity might be to consider a 0% balance transfer card. Now, the way that works, you could take an existing balance that might have an interest rate of 20% and put it into or onto a card that will charge you 0% interest for 12 months, for 15 months, some as long as 18 months. Now, they're not free. You pay a percentage for the amount transferred, and that amount, it's often between 3 and 4%, gets added to your principal. But again, if you're looking to preserve cash, this may make sense in the near term. You get back on your feet, your income resumes, you're feeling more confident, you can pay it down aggressively and hopefully not have it go back onto interest. Places to look for these offers are bankrate.com. One of the great features of Bankrate is that they require all offers to be laid out in exactly the same way, so you can make apples to apples comparisons of different credit card features. So if you're looking for a 0% balance card, you can examine exactly that type of card and compare them on the basis of fees, how long the transfer lasts at 0%, the subsequent interest rate, etc. Every time you look there, you get great current information and options for either calling or clicking online to actually apply for the product. And it does give you some indication of what credit score you need to be approved. But it also makes sense to read reviews of these card offers on websites like NerdWallet and Magnify Money. Both of these, NerdWallet and Magnify Money, do annual credit card reviews, and they point out the best rewards point cards, the best zero transfer cards, etc. So it helps to see what type of spending patterns, what types of credit scores, what types of utilities each of these cards offer. Another action you might want to take if you are looking to either beef up your savings balance or lower your bills is to consider refinancing your mortgage. Now, I say that knowing that there are articles right now saying that it's a little harder to do simply because mortgage origination companies had laid off a bunch of people, so they don't have a lot of staff right now, and they're being deluged by people looking to take advantage of lower mortgage interest rates. I have a couple of clients. We're getting through this process. It is taking a little bit longer, but certainly worth it. So for example, I have a client where took out a mortgage loan some years ago, paid down the principal balance aggressively. So now refinancing that lower balance at a lower interest rate, or annual percentage rate as it's called, your interest rate. And he is looking to benefit from a much lower monthly payment. That'll help his finances both near term and long term. But another opportunity might be what's called a cash out refinance. And a lot of people who own property realize that it's great to own your home. It's great to own maybe an investment property, but you don't have that money to spend on food and medicine and clothing. And so it might make sense to tap the equity in your property and get what's called a cash out refinance. Now, if you do a cash out refinance and you simply tap the equity, if you get a lower APR, you may end up with very close to your same monthly payment amount. Depends on how much money you take out. If you're just looking to bolster your savings, it doesn't have to be a huge amount. So you could hold on to that for emergency use. And maybe, we get through this period, maybe you make a giant principal payment and get caught up. It's your choice. The other thing you could do If you take that money, you keep it in your emergency savings, you end up not using it because you don't get laid off, things go back to normal. You could take that money and use it for a renovation. And if you do, your interest on that cash out refinance is tax deductible. All right. Action number 5. This is where I get a lot of questions. People come to me for recommendations for dealing with debt and insufficient savings right now, but they also come to me with questions about their investment accounts. What should I do? A lot of it is very geared toward how old are you, what types of accounts are we talking about? If you are currently still working, not going to retire in the next few years, you have an opportunity to continue to contribute to your 401k plan or 403b plan and make the most of these lower stock market levels. You're buying at a significant discount. Now, I have talked to a few younger people who actually, in a panic, turned off their 401k and 403b contributions, thinking that this was a prudent thing to do. Generally, we've reversed this simply because you're buying in at lower levels. And if you're buying in on a regular basis at lower market levels, you're taking advantage of a strategy referred to as dollar cost averaging. And what dollar cost averaging means is that you put the same amount of money into an investment. The price may differ. It may be higher, may be lower at the time you buy it, but over time, you get the geometric average of those individual prices, which generally enhances your overall return. So it is one of the best long-term strategies out there for investors. So if you're working, please do contribute to your 401k or 403b plan. If you're able, make a traditional or Roth IRA contribution and invest that money while we're still below our all-time highs. Another opportunity, if you wanted to set up an auto investment into a low-cost index fund. So for example, you could open up a Vanguard fund or an account at Schwab and invest in a broadly diversified low-cost index fund and have the money transferred out of your checking account every month. So you're doing dollar cost averaging. It's with after-tax money. Over time, this will serve you well, and it should grow to a nice asset in a few years. If you don't presently feel comfortable or in a position to open an account, and some do have pretty substantial minimum investment amounts, $2,000, $3,000, depending on the index fund you select, there's another option. You can open up an account, an investment account, with as little as $5 a month with an app called Acorns. It's a great starter account, and they have been sending out newsletters commenting and explaining what's been happening in the stock market since roughly the middle of March, maybe the third month of March. Almost daily updates on days that have been particularly volatile. So they provide education as well as an opportunity to invest as little as $5 a month into exchange-traded funds from Vanguard. So we all know Vanguard, the largest investment management firms on the planet, the inventors of the index fund, and these are some of their exchange-traded funds. So you set up a $5 a month, that's the minimum, you could put in more, comes out of your checking account, goes into a portfolio that is designed around your risk tolerance and investment horizon. It is even though you do this on your phone, you set up your account, your investment account on your phone, you are asked the same questions that you are asked when you open a regular brokerage account or mutual fund account regarding your liquid assets, your age, your risk tolerance, your investment time horizon. So this is a good place to get started. As I said, I've been impressed with the commentary, which is less about predicting where the markets will go, but does a great job explaining what's happening, why markets are quite so volatile, whether going up or going down. So I recommend that you look at it. It's not free. It costs $1 a month. Also deducted as a fee from your checking account, but it's a great way to get started with this dollar cost averaging strategy. Now, if you are retired and anxious about your investment accounts, I would recommend, and again, this is very general advice, simply because I don't know your particular situation, but I would recommend, for the most part, that you simply hold on. This is particularly true if you have sources of income from Social Security, perhaps a pension and savings. You can cover your essential expenses. You're not reliant upon your equity investments for your day-to-day spending. Let's review the 3-bucket strategy. It's on all of my investment slides. The 3 buckets, the blue bucket is your long-term investments. This is where your stocks live. And this is, again, a framing device, how to think about your investments so that you have near-term money, intermediate-term money, and long-term money. If you're in a good place, both from a standpoint of reliable income and savings, there's no real reason to sell your equity investments. If you are feeling anxious that your orange bucket is a little light and you don't have quite as much in savings as you would feel comfortable, then let's look at the green bucket. The green bucket is your intermediate fund. Typically, people hold in their intermediate fund bank CDs, fixed annuities, some bonds or bond funds. That's where most of those have retained their value. Some have gone up. If you wanted to trim from there to refill your cash bucket, put money into the orange bucket, that's where I recommend that you look. But please avoid selling in a panic because, as you probably have seen, and a lot of the investment companies are putting out newsletters and advisories to their clients. Over the long term, the stock market is more than likely to recover. We've been through many, many periods of great volatility, deep recessions. Things sort out, and a well-invested portfolio is likely to return and go up in value. Now, again, and this is very general advice, if you are very short on savings, facing a loss of income, you may want to look at selling some, preferably not all, of your investment positions. Where would I look? What would you sell? First, let's look at bonds and bond funds that are likely up in value. This is not taking a loss. You would actually be able to harvest this money. If you take this money and you put it in savings, great. You can reinvest it if you end up not losing it. If you have gains in your bond funds, if you wanted to rebalance and buy equity funds, that's where you could look to access that money. The other option would be to look at individual securities or equity funds that have a modest loss. And again, if you're just looking to shore up your savings, you want to do something constructive, that might be something to do. Again, if you take a modest loss, if you've held that security and now it's below its original purchase price, if you've held it for longer than a year, you will realize a capital loss, and this will be a long-term capital loss that you can offset a long-term capital gain when you go to do your 2020 income taxes. If you've owned the security for less than a year, it's a short-term capital loss, and that will offset a short-term capital gain, again, when you go to do your 2020 income taxes. You can use up to $3,000 of a loss to offset regular income when you do your taxes, but that's, I would not sell a lot of things that are greatly undervalued right now, simply because I think that these markets are likely to come back as people get excited to go back to work and resume our busy lives. Okay, so in summary, action number 1, revisit our financial priorities, which are now very focused on getting through this period of uncertainty, shoring up our cash, being mindful of how we spend money, and getting through to the other side of this experience. Action number 2, making a new spending plan, understanding by examining our spending amounts on our bank statements. What do we really spend and have to spend money on? Number 3, the fun part, finding money, looking for places where you could access some additional funds that belong to you and shore up your savings. Action number 4, expanding your spending power by also considering how to tap your available credit limits, perhaps extending those, using them judiciously to be able to pay your bills longer into the future during this period of uncertain income. And lastly, how to handle your investment accounts when you're feeling anxious about the recent market volatility. And again, general advice on the investment accounts. These are the resources that I've referenced. I've had each of these during the slides. I will keep this up in case you'd like to copy it. But I'm also going to offer to have PSS Circle of Care post this information and the presentation so that you can access it when you need it. I want to thank you very much for attending. I don't know if we have the ability to entertain questions, but I have on my next slide my email address if you'd like to reach out directly to send me any questions about this presentation or other concerns.
Thank you, Anthea. We do have 2 questions on the Q&A box. I don't know if you can
Great.
see it in the bottom or on top for you.
I don't, let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, the same place.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are the rules regarding federal and state income taxes due for April 15th? This is a great question. Federal and New York State income taxes are now due on July 15th. So we have been given a break. They're not due on April 15th. Similarly, for estimated taxes, there is no estimated tax due on April 15th. The first tax just came out. We do have an estimated payment due in June. And after that, it reverts to the regular September 15th, July 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. The next question, can you withdraw from a CD before maturity without a penalty? Yes. Under the Department of Financial Services, they have required that banks allow people to exit CDs before, without any penalty. Okay, and number 5, investment accounts. What about the category of soon to retire? So soon to retire, if you can avoid realizing losses, that would probably be important for you to do. What you may want to look at doing is rebalancing using gains in your bond portfolio to purchase some stocks or equity funds, preferably index funds, since they're down in value. If you are soon to retire, the other recommendation I would have would be to build up your cash savings so that you have that as a ballast going into retirement. As often as possible, I recommend that people put away about a year's worth of expenses. And again, these are your essential expenses. It's not your lifestyle expenses, but have a year's worth in cash savings before you stop working so that if something like this happens, you don't have to be so concerned about taking money out of your investment accounts. They will come back, but we don't know how soon they will come back. Next question. I understand one does not have to take the RMD for 2020. I've already taken 4 monthly distributions and been told I could only roll over 1 distribution taken in the last 60 days. This may be, this I will have to research. My understanding is that you can roll them all back, but provided they were all within that 60-day period. So if you took 1 in February and 1 in March, you could go back to February 14th, and then from there, 60 days to March 14th to April 14th, those are rollable. And you don't have to take those. You can move them back into your account and not take them. Next question, will this webinar be archived? Or
I was going to ask you that question because she did send me the email, but I didn't have the answer. So
I'm happy sure, I'm happy to archive this or have it distributed.
Okay.
I think we'll post it up on the Circle of Care website.
Yes, the webinar has been recorded, so it will be posted. But if you do want the PowerPoint, so can we share that?
Yes.
Yeah. So Anthea will send it to me, so I can send it to you.
Perfect.
Or you can email her directly if it's that easier.
Okay. And speak to RMD withdrawals. Do you think one would have to pay it next year? Most of the rules coming out are looking a year at a time, 90 days at a time. I think that we are all going to benefit from not having to take an RMD this year, but next year, I think we'll be required to make those withdrawals. And of course, pay taxes on them. All right. And those are the questions. Oops.
Yeah, so if anybody else has any questions?
Well, I hope this was helpful. I was going to make an announcement about the Money Made Simple workshops.
Yeah.
And then I'll answer this last question. We are going to have a next session of Money Made Simple workshops. If you've attended these in the past, you know that they are about 1 hour and 30 minutes. We had done them in person at 39 Broadway. We've done them in Brooklyn. We've done them in the Bronx. We are moving them to webinar, and they will start next week. So April 21st at 2 p.m. We're shortening them. They should be closer to 1 hour, and we're figuring out how we're going to send out or share the handouts that we typically use to teach people how to actually put together a budget, how to manage their credit, how to deal with debt, how to handle their investment accounts, and how to put together a retirement income plan. So now I'll ask. Oh, somebody found a small amount of lost money. That's terrific.
That's great. That's great. I saw that too. So I went and looked, but I didn't find anything. But
okay. Can I contact you directly? Sure, please do. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your questions. And thank you for joining me on this webinar.
Thank you again. So we'll start, like you said, the workshops next week, and everybody else is welcome. And please share the information if you know somebody that will be benefit for them. So please share the information. Thank you, and have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.